Hey, Melissa, so excited that you are with us today. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, just based on the last conversation that we had, just kind of getting to know each other a little bit. I'm really excited to dive in a little bit more into kind of your background and what you're doing right now and how, like, kind of like your purpose in life. And I don't know, I'm just really excited to like jump into the meat of everything. But before we do that, I want to ask you a couple of questions, just kind of a fun getting to know you. So, what is your favorite destination, the place you love going to?
Favorite place I've ever been is Istanbul. And I think it's
What?
the world's best kept secret. It's an
Yeah.
amazing city. Yes.
Gosh, I could just ask a million questions just about that because I love traveling too. And that's just incredible. Wow, what an opportunity to be able to go. Okay, what is the thing that you do to relax?
To relax, I sometimes, if it's early in the day, I might meditate, but usually I need to move to relax. I know that
Yeah.
sounds a little counterintuitive,
No.
but if I take a walk, if I do something that moves my body, it can really calm my mind.
Yes. Yes. I love that. I love that you said that because I think that for a lot of people, especially in the lives that we live right now, a lot of us are really sedentary because we're on our computers or we're on our devices. And so it is the action that can help us to disconnect from that mind stimulation and just move our body to be stimulated. And yeah, it creates a different kind of relaxation. I love that. Awesome. Okay. So, a little bit about your background. You, straight out of high school, you had actually joined the National Guard. And I loved the story that you had shared with me. And so I would love for you to share that with our listeners and really about kind of choosing yourself.
Yeah, that was such a foundational story in my life. I was 17 years old. I was a junior in high school. Long backstory of why this happened, but I ended up joining the Army National Guard. I was very shy. I was very gullible. I had older brothers. I never stood up for myself, and I needed to do something that would help me cultivate that within me to be able to find my own voice and my own way in this world. Well, be careful what you ask the universe for, right? So I went to basic training, came back, did my senior year of high school, went to advanced training, which in the Army, the you go to basic training to be a soldier, and the advanced training then teaches you the job you're going to do in the
Right.
service. And for
Right.
me, it was a helicopter mechanic. I mean, go big or go home, right?
Totally.
Oh, I went to Fort Rucker, Alabama, and shock, I was the only woman there. There was one other woman, but she was several weeks ahead of me in the
Mm.
program. So she was there, but not always in the
With
room
you.
with me
Yeah.
or, yeah. So here I was with all of these men, and it was very clear that no one was going to cater to me. And this was the late 80s. A lot of people didn't want me there. So I had obstacle after obstacle after obstacle put in front of me. But in those first 5 minutes, it was very clear in my mind I was either going to wash out and fail miserably, or I was going to come out on top. And I had to decide. And I chose to come out on top. And for the first time in my life, it was okay to choose me. It was okay to say, I am going to succeed. I am choosing myself. I'm going to invest in myself in this moment and go from there. And I could tell you 20 stories that followed in that same environment where I had to keep answering that question. The universe keeps saying, are you sure? Are you really sure? You think you're up to it? So, yes, over and over again. And the story culminates in the graduation ceremony where the leaders of the school were pinning an Army Achievement Medal on me right above my wings I had earned.
That's amazing. I love that story because I think that so many women come up against those kinds of situations, whether it's in a man's world or even just with other women. I think that women can sometimes be really catty and hurtful to one another, and they can kind of like, well, if I put you down, then I can rise higher, which is totally a backwards mindset. But
Mm-hmm.
I love that whatever obstacle it was, whether it was in, the armed services or in a group of men or in just something that was so radically different than anything that you had done before, especially as far as your upbringing and being with your brothers and not really standing up for yourself, to have all of that kind of like presented to you in the same moment and being like a deer in the headlights moment, almost like, okay,
It
am I going to sink
was.
or swim? Like, this is totally up to me. And I love that you had that realization that it was up to you. This wasn't about anybody else in that moment. It was literally all about you and that you chose you. And I just think that that's amazing. I love that for you. And I love the example that you've set for those around you, and that we're able to experience that. And now we even hear your story in allowing them to have that same permission to be able to choose themselves in hard situations, to be able to listen to their own gut and their own desire and their own goals and say, I don't, if I want something different, I have to choose something different. And this is what I really want. And what a foundational, like when we talk about like core memories or core foundational things, like what an incredible thing to achieve and to recognize at such a young age, to be able to know, moving forward, like, well, this is nothing in comparison to what that was, and I made it.
Exactly. And that was the big thing. When you do something that's impossible, nothing else is
Right.
anymore. It's
Things
just
become
maybe
possible.
difficult, but you've already done impossible.
Right.
So bring it
Right.
on.
And I think that so many people will either negate the impossible thing that they did, or they keep shying away from it. And so they keep teaching themselves that they're not good enough, or they're not worth it, or that they can't overcome. And so it becomes this like lifelong spiral of not choosing themselves rather than stepping up. And so that actually leads us into kind of this next chapter of your life. You went into science, you like loved all things science, went into teaching and like totally science minded. But you kept getting a calling to do something different. And I get that because I had that same thing for me about 5 years ago. And it was like, you really need to do this other thing, which is the thing I'm doing now. But I put it off for a good long time before I finally just jumped into it. So let's talk about that a little bit. Like, what was that like for you to be like set and like stable, I guess, in what you were doing and the profession that you had and the purpose that you felt driven to? But then there was this other thing outside of yourself that was like, no, it's this. And you're like, oh, no, it's not. And no, it is. Like, talk about that a little bit and what that thing was that you kept being called to.
Well, for context, it was late 80s, early 90s, and the big scary thing at that time was the AIDS virus. I was going to find a treatment or a cure for that. That was my guiding principle. So I went into biology. I studied molecular biology and had a real affinity for and a giftedness for genetics. And that was what I was going to do. Early 90s, the leaders at the time in Washington tried to overhaul the healthcare system. As a result, all the research and development money dried up. So there wasn't funding for research. So I had to decide what I was going to do. And the most important thing for me in deciding that was that whatever I did, it had to have some meaning to me. It had to be important. That was the biggest box that had to be checked.
Yeah.
That whatever service I provided, whatever work I did, had to have some meaning to it, and it had to benefit people. So I was struggling a little bit, and I decided to go back and to teach school. So I taught high school biology. Some funny stories there for another
Bless
time.
you, all teachers, especially high school
Just a little
teachers.
side note, any teachers watching, every syllable of words are important.
Oh,
Just gonna set that there.
that's hilarious.
But so anyway, I got connected again with a worshiping community that I grew up in. And I was camping one weekend. And I tell you what, I got a call to ministry. And I was not pleased. Not happy. I found my place. I was doing something meaningful. Going back for 3 years of grad school? No, thank you. My student loans were paid off. I was on a roll, not interested in anything else whatsoever. And I was really kind of honked off about the whole thing, to be honest with you. So for the next year, I resisted it. And, you know, the universe, when it wants you to know or understand something, you know,
Consistent.
there can be a volcano go off in your backyard where there was never even a mountain before. It feels like
True. It's
that
true.
you just get bombarded every direction. And that kept happening. And I was like, fine, I will do this, but I'm not ready yet. I need a year to wrestle with this and come to terms with it. So I did. And I did go to seminary. And it was kind of funny. I did everything I could to sabotage the interview. They asked me what I would do if they told me no. And I said, I'd be happy. I'd go throw a party because it's not my choice to be here. Never in my sights, never in my goals. And here I am. So please tell me no. And we can both go on about our business. He gave me a scholarship.
Oh.
So here I am 20 some years later. Obviously, that was a great path for me. And I find all kinds of purpose and joy in what I do.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I really like the aspect of, you know, you almost had to reinvent yourself at that point, like what that was going to look like for you to go from, I mean, well, I'm sure you had to do that a couple of points along the way,
Yes.
from, you know, being in the National Guard to then becoming a molecular biologist to then becoming a biology teacher. And then all of a sudden you're like radically shifting gears into a whole new arena and like trying to find yourself in that. And so many women, I think, are called to something outside of what they're actually right now pursuing, or they're ignoring it because they're too scared, or because they don't feel qualified for it, or because they don't feel like they're enough, like that they don't really have anything to give in that arena. And so I love that you set that example of following the thing that you were supposed to be doing. And it has been amazing for you. And you've been able to provide so much light to your community and those that you serve, and being able to uplift them and inspire them and help them. So I do want to talk for a minute about, you know, in ministering work, you could go down a million rabbit holes as far as kind of like your specialty in the thing that you do, right? And there's a lot of things that you can do and tangents you could get off on, and you know, it could be just like this totally different thing for you, but you kind of found your niche in one particular area. So talk to me for a second about what that was and why you feel like that was the thing that really came like full circle for you in creating that life purpose, and the thing that you really wanted to educate about and to pursue more, you know, fully.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to underscore that even though you're on the right path, it doesn't mean it's always going to be easy. It can be rife with challenges and difficulties.
Most of the time, if you're on the right path, it's not going to be
is.
easy. You can be guaranteed to have stumbling blocks.
Right. And those are good because you get to grow.
Yes.
The person I am now, I don't know if I could have envisioned 20 years ago, but it's
Totally.
so cool. But yeah, throughout the years, what I have witnessed in other people is, well, okay, I'm going to go at it this way. Marvel has created this universe of superheroes, but their superheroes have supernatural powers. They can see through things and bend things that shouldn't bend and fly and defy all of these laws of physics. To me, that's not a good representation of what a hero is. I have witnessed heroic acts in everyday life, in everyday people, time after time after time, and it just always humbles me what people can do.
Yeah.
And, you know, I learned this at 18 down at Fort Rucker, Alabama, but people are always displaying this in their own life and in their own struggles. But if you are always focused on getting the entire picture right, it's too overwhelming.
Totally.
Sometimes you just got to break it down and address the moment in front of you and figure out how to come through that moment. I mean, yeah, it's important to keep the big picture in mind, don't get me wrong, or
Sure.
you'll end up going all different directions. But what I have learned is that when people are going through something difficult or uncomfortable, whether it is learning a new skill at their job, or, learning how to live without a significant person in their life, or whatever it is, that there's a process, there are some steps that are common in all of these situations, even if it's overcoming something you're afraid of.
Yeah.
There's a certain process and some certain steps, and being able to support people as they do these things has been, golly, just humbling and empowering, and all of the isms, all of the superlatives. And it's been such a rewarding journey to be the one that gets to witness that, and to be invited into that holy space in the lives of others as they do that.
To be able to help support them in that.
Mm-hmm.
What is something, so one of the things that you really help people with is sometimes we just need somebody to sit in the tough space with us. Sometimes we're going through something and we don't really need anybody to necessarily do anything for us. We just need to know that there's somebody there. And so from my understanding, that's a lot what you do, is you are there for people to help them kind of walk through and process those hard moments, the things that they've either experienced in the past or are experiencing now. What is something that you would recommend to people who are going through those hard things right now? Like, how do they find that person? How do they, because I think a lot of us shut ourselves in, and it is through the talking, through the companionship of somebody else, that helps us to be able to process that on our own, and to be able to not stuff emotions and then have it like explode later on in life. Right. Which I am totally like that. I grew up is just kind of a, like, there's nothing I can do about it. Throw it behind the brick wall, throw it behind the brick wall, throw it behind the brick wall, until, years and years and years down the road, when I got married, my husband is a huge communicator. He likes to talk about everything, and he wants to understand, and he's a learner. And so he really wants to understand, which I'm sure that you're much like that. He likes to be able to like understand, diagnose, figure out like, what's the plan of execution? Like, how do we keep moving down this path? And mine was like, I skip all of like that kind of inner stuff. And it's just like, let's just take action. And so that was how I had gone about my whole life, was just like, let's take action. I don't want to sit here and talk about my feelings. Like, that's so dumb. But I found that not only was it beneficial for me to learn how to talk about my feelings, but also to be able to let him in that way, both for him and for myself, in being able to create that kind of vocal therapy that happens when we just can get it out, and we can feel the comfort coming in, and that we can recognize things in a way that in our head we sometimes spin out of control. So what would be, like a key advice that you would give to somebody who's maybe sitting in that spot right now that's spinning stuff around in their head? What would you tell them?
First, I would tell them that physical health, emotional health, mental health is all connected. And if you don't deal with the emotional, spiritual things, they're going to manifest themselves physically.
Absolutely.
And it's not me saying that, Google Johns Hopkins or Mayo Clinic and forgiveness. Google those things and you'll get documents after documents of research that when we hold on to stuff, it affects us physically. Yeah. So learning how to let that stuff, to say goodbye to that stuff. Is a huge thing we can do for ourselves. That's the first thing I would tell folks. And the second thing is, we all connect differently, especially when it comes to spiritual matters and spiritual health. And I don't care what you call the divine energy in this world. Right. I don't care by what path you come or what names you use, but we are embodied spirits, and it's so important and beneficial to us to connect with that, however we name it, and observe that in our lives. And I have developed a personality quiz that helps us understand how we do that, because, I was always told, go pray, do it this way. And you know what? It never worked for me. Never. I never felt connected to anything doing that. And I found things that did work for me. And I found the work of Corinne Ware in the early 90s, and then I've built on what she started and added my own experience to it. And they're basically, broadly speaking, 4 different ways that we connect to those spiritual things.
Yeah.
So figuring that out is going to go a long way.
Brilliant. I think that is really important to distinguish because, the way that we exercise, that feels good to us can be so different. And the way that we eat, the meals that we prepare is totally different to each of us. And the paths that we pursue in our life is so different for each of us. And so it would hold true that the way that we connect is also going to be different for each of us, and that we need to figure out what that is for us and honor that, and not expect ourselves to connect in the same way that somebody else does. It can be totally different. And I love that you have that quiz available. I will put a link to it in the show notes. I'm assuming it's on your website. Yeah. Yep. So I will put a link to that in the show notes for anybody that wants to go and take that quiz and be able to kind of figure out what that looks like for them.
I will add, when my husband and I go to see a performance by a magician, we have such different needs and wants in that situation. He wants to know how it works. He wants to know how that trick works. He's trying to figure it out the whole time. And I just want the wonder. I don't want to know how it works. I know it's not magic. I know but I don't want to know. Right. I just like the wonder.
Yes. He wants to know the method and you want the magic. Yeah. I like that. And I think that that's good. And I think that we should all honor whatever that is for us in our lives, and that we don't put ourselves in a box that maybe we've put ourselves in because of somebody else's expectations, or that somebody else has put us in from a small age, that we all just kind of march to the beat of our own drum and recognize our own value in being who we are. That took me a long time I've always been individual in myself, and, being willing to, step outside of the box and all of that kind of stuff. But it can be really easy, though, in certain circumstances, to shy away from who you are because it doesn't fit the mold of what's happening outside of you.
Yeah. And when you're going through something that's really hard and really difficult, you don't have the emotional energy to experiment with what is going to work. Totally. Knowing that about yourself is going to, and this addresses your earlier question, knowing that about yourself is going to help you find that person you connect with. Mm-hmm. And it's going to help you connect with that source that's, bigger than all of us.
Yeah, it's going to help you be able to find that peace within yourself. And I love that. So one last thing that I wanted to talk about before we kind of wrap it up is that when we were talking the other day, we kind of got on this back and forth discussion about following the path of least resistance. And I wanted to talk for just a minute about, obviously your whole life is an example of not following the path of least resistance. You're like, resistance. Yeah, give it to me. Resistance. Oh yeah. I already tried
but
that.
Not every day.
No. Right. And not always in a, yes, I accept it either. Like sometimes it's like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do that. But I have also found it is true in my life that the things that provide the most value in my life are the things that come with the highest cost. That could hold true in having kids, in having a successful marriage, in growing a business, in starting a ministry. I would just love for you to kind of share your thoughts on what that's been like to not follow the path of least resistance, and some parting words of encouragement for people who are shying away from that because it looks maybe insurmountable.
I would say be discerning, because there are so many things in this world that are difficult and we shouldn't do all of them. But there are things that are for us that will grow us to be people that can contribute in a way that we never thought of before. There are some difficult things that are for us. And so be discerning so that you're not fighting every battle that comes to your door, because that's going to wear you out and you're not going to get anywhere. But when you do find those things that do keep speaking to you, that are pulling you forward, lean into it. Lean into it. It's going to be difficult and it's probably going to hurt a little bit, but it's going to be okay. Because on the other side of that is a life that is full of joy and purpose. How many times do you get up in the morning and you're just so excited for your day because you love what you do?
Yeah.
That's what's on the other side of the difficult and the uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you said about there are hard things that are for us. And having an expectation that life is supposed to be easy all the time is just really a incorrect perception of how life is actually going to be, because it is usually in the hardest moments of our life that we grow the most, and that
Yeah,
we're able to find that trust in ourselves that we have our own backs and that we can get through anything.
you can do hard things. And if you never do, your world's going to continue to shrink.
Yeah.
You're going to cut off from relationships that are difficult. You're going to cut off from activities that are difficult, and your world's just going to get really small.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, awesome. Thank you so much. I think one of the things that I love the most about people like you is the example that you set for those that are around you and the community that you impact in, showing them that, when we step up in our own lives and we show up in our own lives and we do hard things, it only gives permission to the people around us to do the same thing. Instead of being the crabs in a bucket that are all trying to pull each other down, it's like a rising tide lifts all boats. And I feel like you're one of those people that is helping to lift the tide so that it can lift the people around you. And I honor you for that, for showing up in your life and doing the calling that you were called to do, rather than, staying in, I'm sure what would have been a meaningful life that, in that path too, but that, so many people have benefited from what you have done because you chose this path. And I just think that that's really great. I applaud you for that. And I just wanted to thank you for coming on. How can people find you? I'm going to put all your information in the show notes too, but how can people find you online?
Thank you for the acknowledgement, Christy. That means a lot. And yeah, all the links will be in the show notes. I've written a book, Teach Us to Pray.
Awesome.
I'll send you the link for that.
Perfect.
melissaebken.com.
Melissa Ebken.
We'll get you
Ebkin.
Ian. There's no I in Ebken.
Oh my word. Ebken. I don't know how.
Yeah, I'll make sure you have all of those links. But yeah, find me online. I would love to connect with you and support you in however I can. And
Brilliant.
if nothing else, I want to hear your story. Just tell me the difficulties you've come through.
Awesome. All right, Melissa, thank you so much for joining us today, for hopping on.
And the quiz. I'll make sure you have the link for the quiz.
Yeah, we'll do the link for the quiz and all your socials and your book link too. That would be great. Okay, perfect. You. All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in today. So excited that you were here. I hope that it was purposeful for you, that you found some wisdom in it. Just even one golden nugget is something that can totally change your life around. So thank you again, Melissa, for joining us, and we will catch up with you guys later.
Thanks, Christy.